Hey there, everybody. As of this recording, the Nintendo Direct just ended on March 3rd, and it had its ups and downs for me. Ultimately, they were mostly ups. I thought that it was a great Direct. I know my wallet is hurting in anticipation of a lot of these things coming out. We got to see Star Fox Zero. We got to see a new Kirby game. Pretty excited about the Paper Mario game that's coming out. We also got to see more of Metroid Federation Force. This game, I kind of assumed that it was going to be kind of quietly swept under the rug because of the very negative attention that it's been getting. But they revealed it, so, they revealed that it's still going on. And again, it's not being met with the most eager of reactions, I guess we would say. And I'm sort of one of those people where I am a little bummed out about it. And I mean, don't get it wrong, I'm gonna give it a chance, and that's just the way I am when it comes to games. No matter what it is, it could be a ridiculous dancing game, or the highlight game of the year, but I'm gonna give it a shot. And so I'm a little bummed out, but at the same time, like I said, I'm gonna give it a chance. But I thought I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm bummed out and why I have the feelings that I have, even though I'm still gonna play the game anyway. And to be honest, it all stems to the fact that Metroid actually, as a series, means a lot to me. Is in my life and in my gaming life. When I first played Metroid was the sci-fi game for me. I love sci-fi, but I'm a bigger fan of sci-fi that is a completely made up world as opposed to sci-fi that is sort of based on Earth, or Earth of the future, or we have left Earth and there's something else. Like, I like when the whole thing is completely made up and none of it feels like it is tied to our actual universe. Metroid was that for me. At the time that Metroid first came out, we had Zelda, which again, I love that series for the same exact reason. We also had Mario, but Mario, I always felt like they tried to say that Mario, he came from our world and ended up in theirs, which I correct me if I'm wrong, don't kill me if I'm wrong, but that's always sort of the way I took that story. So it was kind of attached to us. Again, there was nothing wrong with it. It just sci-fi, real science fiction. Metroid was it for me. This was what I like. I liked the crazy creatures and the crazy environment and the concept and everything. As a game, nowadays I definitely prefer a much more intricate story, but I appreciated the aspect of Metroid where it was, hey, this is what's going on. Here you are on the planet. Go to work. And there was nothing else to help you in that game, which speaks just to the gameplay itself. I was the kid that I drew my own maps with my own little icons for what was where because I tried to memorize it all. And Metroid was the game that first and foremost was everything that I was looking for in a game. Atari had a bunch of games, but Atari games were Atari games. They were very light. They didn't really have any story. There wasn't a lot of depth to those games. So, Metroid was it for me. The brutal, unforgiving gameplay that, if believe it or not, that was that was attractive to me. I liked that. I liked that it was, you didn't really know where you had to go, so you had to sort of, like I said, I drew my own maps, but you had to remember it. It was interesting to me to have to do that. When I beat the game, the manual tells you that it's a guy. The everything about video games and even growing up just tells you that the hero is a guy. So it may sound hokey, but when I beat it really quick and the armor came off and it was a female character, blew my mind. And it taught me a valuable lesson, a valuable life lesson, which was to challenge conventional thinking. It made me look at everything and think, why does it always have to be that way? And that is a lesson that I not only took in small part in video games, but I took that into the rest of my life, to look around and to say, why does one thing have to be the way everybody says? Why can't it be something else? And that is the essence of creativity. It's one of the reasons I started to like cosplaying. It's one of the reasons I like to draw. It's one of the reasons I like to make things. In art class, I was always the kid that was really eager to do the project because I was interested in turning those straws and that milk carton into a log cabin. As corny as that sounds, that was interesting to me, and it was a way for me to look at the things around me and say, everybody says it's this, why can't it be that? And I get a lot of that from Metroid. I know it sounds dumb, but I really do. I didn't have too much experience with the second Metroid game, but then I got the third game, and I remember the day that we bought the game. I got it brand new. It had just recently come out, and I was super excited to go and get it. So I saved up my money. My parents were big on, you save half the money and we'll put in the other half. So we went and we got my game, but I was bummed out because we had a bunch of other errands to do. Well, my father had a bunch of other errands to do that day. So we went and got the game first, and then I carried the game around all day with me, opened it up, took out the booklet, and was reading the booklet while we were going from place to place. It just in anticipation. I wanted to get home and play this game so bad, and I wanted to soak it as much as I could. When I started the game, and you're doing the reading, you're doing the storyline, and there's the music going on. And right off the bat, I'm thinking this is incredible. But the music, the prologue music, it taught me that music was so important. I mean, at this point, some games had great music. There were games like Mega Man 1 that had Cutman's theme, and of course the Super Mario Brothers song, which I think the only reason people really, really, really like that game is because you heard it all the time. But it taught me that music can create the scene. I mean, I'm reading words on a screen and I'm feeling something. I'm feeling the heroic aspect of that song. I'm feeling the mystery behind what's going to happen in the story. And I'm 2-3 minutes into the game. That was when I learned how important music was to a game and to the atmosphere that they were trying to portray and that you were feeling. Whether or not they were trying to make it a certain way, how you heard the music changed it for you too. Then I mean, fast forward, Super Metroid, probably one of the greatest games ever made. One of my favorite games ever made. There's 1,000 different ways to play that game. But fast forward ahead to Prime. And at this point in my life, I was kind of upset that everybody was straying away from 2D side-scrollers, which I was a huge fan of and still am. So it kind of bummed me out that they were sort of going into that first person. It felt like everybody was trying to do that. So I was tempted to not play it, but I said, you know what? Everything I'm seeing looks beautiful. Let me give it a shot. I couldn't be happier that I did. Prime was a lesson in, even if you don't like what you see on the surface, give it a chance because there's probably going to be something you love. And I loved Prime. Love Prime 2. Love Prime 3. I love Prime 3, and a lot of people, when it came out, I was hearing didn't really like the game. And I think a part of that was the control scheme, which I was actually okay with. I thought that it was great. Prime helped me move further into first-person style games. Not even the team aspect, but the storyline aspect. Games like Halo, I would have probably never given a shot if it wasn't for the fact that I played Prime and I loved Prime so much. So it taught me to, which is a very relevant lesson right now, but even if it doesn't look like it's going to be okay on the surface, or it's not going to be your thing on the surface, give it a shot anyway. I mean, at the same time that Prime came out, we got Fusion, and Fusion was another unbelievable game. It was, I got my brand new feeling of first person, and then I got my side scrolling beauty. What a wonderful game Fusion is. Just another fantastic game in the series. And it felt like the Metroid series was getting the respect that I felt it deserved. Mario and Zelda and some of these other franchises, they get so much attention and they're very deserving of it. But I always thought Metroid was right there at the beginning of NES. I thought that it should be up there with them. And it felt like this is what they were getting. Fast forward to today, and Federation Force is not what we were all hoping for. There are reasons for that. By the way, yes, I know I skipped Other M. I had my issues with that game, which are basically the same issues that you heard a million times. We didn't like what they did to the character, which honestly is my only real issue, because the gameplay itself, if it was anything but Metroid, we probably wouldn't have had a problem with it. But because it was and this may be a Federation Force issue too, because it says Metroid on the box, we feel like we should be getting something, and we don't feel like we're getting it. But Federation Force, it's just not what I was hoping for, and I think that's where the disappointment comes from. I don't think it's unfair or unrealistic to see fans have such a negative reaction and think that it's unwarranted. I think that if I'm still crying about it and posting about it and complaining and throwing a fit a week from now, yeah, that's a little babyish, and that's a little, maybe you should calm down. And if you've got a problem with the new stuff, just keep playing the old stuff. Nothing about Federation Force has changed the fact that Super Metroid exists and that it is an unbelievable game. So nothing's going to stop you from going back and playing that. And if you don't want to give the new game a try, no one's forcing you to give the new game a try. But I was just hoping that it was going to be something else, and it wasn't something else. It was what it is, I should say. So when it comes out, it's not going to be the game that I wanted. It's not going to be a more, and I use the term loosely, but more realistic style of gameplay. It's going to be the little chibi style art characters, and it seems like it's going to be a very lighthearted game with not a dark atmosphere, which is one of the things that Metroid had always going for it right from the beginning, was a very dark atmosphere, and that does not seem like this kind of game. So everything about the game doesn't seem like something that I'm looking for in a Metroid game. So why am I going to play it? Because I'm not a dummy. Like I said before, the bottom line is, if it doesn't look like it's something that you might be into, give it a shot anyway. You never know. It may be the worst game I've ever played. It may also be a very fun game when I look past the Metroid name. It may be something that I want to sit around and play with a bunch of people and go online and do a bunch of stuff and unlock all the achievements and do everything. It may be none of those things. It's all up in the air at this point. And to have your reservations about it is one thing, but to pass final judgment on the game months before it comes out, after everybody's worked so hard on it, that's ridiculous. And a shout out to the people who have worked on it and have continued to work on it despite the very negative reaction that it's getting. I applaud you for continuing on and shutting out the haters and keep doing what you're doing. My hope, in all honesty, is that the game is well received. I hope that when it does come out, that people do look at it and say, hey, this is actually not that bad. And maybe Nintendo takes a look at it a little bit more at the series as a whole and says, maybe this is a series that we can actually get back to working with. We can have our serious games, and then we can have some fun, lighthearted stuff. I have no problem with separating it into both. You know, while the Zelda universe has always been relatively serious, quote unquote. You know, at some point they split them up where it was you had the Wind Waker style animation where it looked more juvenile, but you know the gameplay was still sort of serious. But then you had the, you know, Twilight Princess and all that where it looked like a grown up game. I'm throwing a lot of air quotes around here. I'm sorry you can't see them, but both of those games were fantastic. And, you know, both of those series were fantastic. You had Wind Waker, you had Phantom Hourglass, Spirit Tracks. These games were terrific. They were unbelievable. And as far as the art style goes, they went off in two different directions, but they were both wonderful directions. You know, I have no problem if they were to do something like that with Metroid. You know, continue Federation Force. Use that art style and that gameplay to give me more stories in the Metroid universe. And then when it's time to put Samus on the forefront, give me something that looks a little bit more like what we would hope Prime 4 does. I would love to see a Prime 4. I would love to see 5. You know, whatever happens after Fusion. But if you want to give me a series of games with the Federation Force guys, I'm okay with that too. Ultimately, the full bottom line is that Metroid as a series means a lot to me. It's to me, it's probably one of the most important series as far as my video game development and upbringing. You know, Mario was there, but I don't know. There's something about it. Mario was fantastic, but it never challenged me to think differently. You know, Mario was just Mario games. You pop them in and you action platform, and that was it. Zelda games gave me a lot of puzzle work, and that taught me to love puzzle games. Games like Lufia 2, where they were very puzzle intensive, and I got some of that from Zelda. Even though Zelda puzzles were hardly, you know, there were hardly, you would spend days trying to figure them out, but it was like a light introduction into that world, and then that got me further into it. So Zelda, you know, Zelda's an important series for me. Metroid is probably one of the most important though, because Metroid got me into wanting to explore. It got me into helped me in the fantastic sci-fi worlds. You know, the idea of looking at a whole brand new planet. It was, like I said, challenging my conventions, playing as a character who you thought was a male character and it turned out to be a female character. You know, that's an important life lesson, and I attribute all of that to Metroid. So my problem isn't really with the Federation Force game. It's so much so that I feel like they're looking at the series and saying, no one wants to play this, so let's do whatever we want to it. And if in the off chance anybody from Nintendo ever hears this, totally untrue. We are very much interested in Metroid as a series. We would love to see where the storyline goes next. I understand that now that we've seen more of the game, there is some storyline behind it. There is something a little bit more. I'm hoping it doesn't feel tacked on. You know, that's another hope that I have for the game, that when we play it, we're actually very enlightened as to the story, and maybe that becomes a direction that we want to follow. You know, I have high hopes with low expectations, and I don't know if that sounds bad. I don't want it to sound bad. It just sort of is that way. All right, everybody. I wanted to thank you for joining me, for listening to me ramble on for what looks like about 20 minutes now. If you made it to the end of this, then thank you. And I hope to hear your thoughts on the game. I hope to hear your thoughts on the Nintendo Direct itself. What did you think of everything? And all right, I'll see you in the comment section.